I woke up early that morning, just like I always did, ready to face another day of teaching. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and the house was quiet, giving me a peaceful moment to prepare. As I got dressed, my mind was already racing with thoughts about the day's lessons. But there was one student in particular who occupied my thoughts more than the others. Allison. She was, without a doubt, my most challenging student, and I found myself wondering how to deal with her that day. A part of me hoped that maybe, just maybe, Allison would show more interest in class today. Deep down, though, I knew the chances were slim. It was like trying to light a match in a rainstorm. Possible, but not probable. When I arrived at school, I greeted a few students before heading to my classroom. The morning flew by in a blur of lessons and activities, and before I knew it, it was time for Allison's class. I watched as the students filed in, taking their seats with the usual chatter and rustling of backpacks. Then, like a celebrity making her grand entrance, Allison swept into the room, immediately drawing all eyes to her. I could hear her voice, loud and proud, asking her friends if they'd seen her new watch. She was showing it off like it was a prized trophy, claiming it was from some fancy brand. I couldn't help but overhear her boast that no one else in the school would have anything like it. From my desk, I observed the scene, feeling a knot form in my stomach as I sensed the discomfort of the other students. They seemed put off by Allison's blatant display of wealth and superiority. I took a deep breath and called the class to order, trying to redirect their attention to the day's lesson. But Allison, it seemed, was more interested in her phone than in discussing literature. I had to ask her to put it away, reminding her of the school rules. I kept my voice calm and level, not wanting to embarrass her in front of everyone. Throughout the lesson, I tried to engage Allison more actively, asking her direct questions. But her responses were brief and disinterested, as if she already knew everything there was to know. It was like talking to a brick wall, frustrating and seemingly pointless. After class, I found myself pondering how to make Allison see the value in her education. How could I help her treat her classmates with more respect? I thought about contacting her mother again, hoping that this time it might make a difference. Maybe this time it'll work, I thought to myself, clinging to a shred of hope. But even as I considered it, I felt a familiar weight of doubt settling in my chest. It was a feeling I'd come to know well in my years of teaching. The struggle between hope and reality. I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right with Allison's situation. Her behavior was more than just typical teenage rebellion. There was a desperation to it that worried me. As I packed up my things to head home, I made a decision. That would change everything. I decided to visit Allison's home, to see for myself what might be going on. It wasn't something I'd normally do, and I felt a twinge of guilt for the intrusion. But my concern for Allison outweighed my reservations. I had to know if there was something more I could do to help her. Little did I know, what I would see at that house would shock me to my core. It would challenge everything I thought I knew about Allison and force me to confront my own assumptions. As I drove to her neighborhood, my heart was pounding with anticipation and fear. What would I find? And more importantly, how would it change things? I couldn't have prepared myself for the reality that awaited me. I had tried reaching out to Allison's mother before, but those attempts hadn't yielded much success. Still, I felt it was worth trying again, clinging to that sliver of hope we teachers often hold on to. I picked up the phone and dialed her number, my fingers moving almost on autopilot. To my surprise, the phone rang and rang, eventually transferring to voicemail. That's odd. I muttered to myself, worry creeping into my voice. I knew getting in touch with Allison was challenging, but I hadn't expected it to be this difficult just to make a simple phone call. It felt like trying to catch smoke with my bare hands. I made a mental note to pay closer attention to Allison the next day, hoping to speak with her directly and understand what was really going on. As the exhausting day came to an end, I started my journey home. My mind was a whirlwind of the day's events and the challenges of teaching such a diverse class. Walking through a quiet residential area, something caught my eye. In the distance, I saw Allison, and she was crying. The house she was standing in front of didn't look like somewhere she'd typically be. It seemed more like a friend's place. Without any warning, Allison had started sobbing right there on the street. I froze in my tracks, unable to just stand by and watch. My instinct to help took over, and I started moving towards her. But as soon as Allison looked up and saw me approaching, she quickly wiped her tears and took off running in the opposite direction. "Allison, wait!" I called out, but it was too late. She had already disappeared around the corner, leaving me standing there alone, feeling helpless and worried. I knew something was wrong, but the walls Allison had built around herself seemed higher and thicker than ever. With a heavy sigh, I realized that pushing for a conversation right then might only drive her further away. Back at home, I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd witnessed. The contrast between Allison's confident, sometimes arrogant persona at school and the vulnerable, lonely girl I'd seen on the street was stark. What could have hurt her so deeply that she'd break down crying in public like that? Was it something to do with the people in that house? And as her teacher, how could I help her? I sat there, lost in thought, feeling every bit of my 30 years of teaching experience weighing on me. I knew that lecturing Allison about her behavior or morals wasn't the key to reaching her. What she really needed was someone to be there for her, to listen without judgment. Maybe I've been wrong in trying to force her into the reality I think she should inhabit, I reflected. A twinge of regret in my heart. Perhaps what she needs is time and space to come to her own conclusions. That evening, as I prepared dinner, I found myself pondering the complexities of human relationships. As I mechanically chopped vegetables for dinner, I couldn't help but reflect on how often we misunderstand the motivations behind others' actions. I found myself repeating that old adage, "Money can't buy happiness," and it had never felt more true or meaningful than it did in that moment. Allison often talked about wealth and status, but I sensed she was searching for something that money couldn't buy. Perhaps she was looking for acceptance, love, or simply to be understood. As the night wore on, my thoughts drifted to my own experiences of feeling out of place and lonely. I realized that everyone, no matter their age or status, carries their own inner struggles. It's through sharing these experiences that we find comfort and strength. With this in mind, I decided to try a different approach with Allison the next day. I was determined to speak to her not as a teacher, but as one human being reaching out to another who was hurting. As the new day dawned, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The previous night's deep contemplation had prepared me for the challenges that lay ahead. The journey to school stretched out before me under a clear sky, filling me with a sense of optimism. Entering the school, I was greeted by the usual morning hustle and bustle, but one figure stood out in the everyday scene. It was Sophia, with her modest demeanor and gentle smile. A stark contrast to Allison in almost every way. Sophia greeted me with a warm, "Good morning, Ms. Lindsay," her smile reaching all the way to her eyes. She wished me a wonderful day, and I felt my heart warm at the sincerity and purity of her greeting. Despite coming from a poor family, Sophia demonstrated a richness every day that money couldn't buy. The morning progressed as planned, and soon it was break time. While it was a moment for me to catch my breath, I couldn't completely take my eyes off the students' behavior. That's when I saw Allison arriving late, her entrance drawing attention from everyone around, not just me, as usual. Sophia, true to her nature, approached Allison, offering understanding and support. I overheard Sophia asking Allison if she was okay, noting that it was unusual for her to arrive so late. She added that although they'd been studying together for a long time, they'd never really talked, but she was there if Allison ever needed anything. Sophia's voice was filled with genuine concern about the reason for Allison's tardiness. However, Allison responded with a contemptuous look and an arrogant attitude. I heard Allison's cold, prideful voice as she told Sophia she could come whenever she wanted. She declared that people like her didn't need to follow the same rules as everyone else. With that, Allison walked away, heading towards a group of friends from wealthy families. The very kids whose financial status she aspired to. My heart sank as I watched Sophia standing there, trying to process the rejection she just experienced. The pain of humiliation was evident on her face, and it felt like a knife twisting in my own gut. I'd been observing this scene from a distance, and I could feel my chest tighten with sorrow for Sophia. In that moment, I knew I had to step in, not just as a teacher, but as someone who wanted to bridge the divide between these students. I walked over to Sophia and gently placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Sophia, don't take it to heart," I said, my voice soft but firm. I explained that Allison was dealing with her own issues, and her attitude towards others was a reflection of that, not a reflection on Sophia. Sophia looked up at me, and I could see the hurt in her eyes, clear as day. Her voice was thick with emotion as she whispered that she had only wanted to help. "That just shows what a wonderful heart you have," I said with an encouraging smile. I told her I'd talk to Allison, emphasizing how important it was for Allison to understand the impact of her words and actions. I could see relief wash over Sophia's face at my words, and she gave a small nod. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on my shoulders. I knew that talking to Allison wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. In my mind, I envisioned a school community where every student felt valued and respected, regardless of their background or circumstances. It was a lofty goal, but one I was determined to work towards, one student at a time.
In the classroom, the usual pre-class buzz filled the air, with laughter and conversations echoing throughout the space. Allison, as always, was at the center of her friend group, sharing stories and laughter. Today's hot topic was money, a subject Allison loved to brag about when it came to her family's wealth. She casually, yet deliberately, pointed towards Sophia and whispered something, causing her friends to burst into laughter. Sophia, sitting a short distance away, was too engrossed in talking to her own friends to notice Ms. Lindsay entering the classroom. The atmosphere was thick with teenage energy, reminiscent of a bustling mall food court on a Saturday afternoon. Allison's group, with their designer bags and latest smartphones, stood out like a flock of peacocks among sparrows. Their laughter cut through the air, sharp and exclusive, a stark contrast to the softer tones from Sophia's corner. Miss Lindsay's arrival went unnoticed, her presence overshadowed by the social dynamics playing out before her. The scene was a microcosm of high school life, with its cliques, whispers, and unspoken hierarchies, all too familiar to anyone who's navigated those turbulent years.
As I entered the classroom, I felt my presence cut through the air like a knife, instantly changing the atmosphere of gossip. The conversations naturally died down as the students showed respect for their teacher's arrival. While I prepared to start the lesson, I reminded myself that today's theme was a personal one. Each student was to present about their family, and I explained that the purpose was to share our roots and the uniqueness of each family. One by one, the students came forward to talk about their families. Some stories were full of warmth and love, while others spoke of challenges and overcoming adversity. When it was Allison's turn, I could sense the anticipation in the room. With her usual confidence, Allison began talking about her family. She spoke of unparalleled wealth and success, international travels, luxury cars, and extravagant parties. I listened as she emphasized how her parents' wealth made her superior and smarter than others. Allison concluded with an arrogant smile, saying her parents always told her they were different and superior, so they could have anything they wanted. After Allison's presentation, the classroom fell silent, and I noticed many students exchanging uncomfortable glances. I kept my expression neutral as I processed her words, then spoke in a calm voice. I thanked Allison for sharing about her family and remarked how interesting it was to hear everyone's experiences. Without directly addressing Allison, I conveyed a clear message about the things money can't buy, despite our different backgrounds. I continued, explaining that true wealth isn't determined by money in the bank, cars in the garage, or vacation destinations. Instead, I emphasized that it's measured by shared family time, laughter, support during hard times, celebrations, and joys. I defined happiness as knowing there are people who love us unconditionally, no matter what happens. As I looked around the classroom, I made eye contact with several students, including Sophia, who was smiling shyly. I concluded by encouraging everyone to cherish those moments and people, stressing that ultimately, those are the things that truly matter. After the class ended and the students slowly filed out, I remained alone, lost in thought. I hoped my words would make Allison reflect on her attitude and what she should value in life. I realized it might take time to change her thinking, but I believed that each word spoken could gradually change their hearts and help them understand what's truly important.
As the afternoon sky painted itself in soft hues of orange and pink, Allison walked alone down the street. Her usually confident stride was now slowed by hesitation, born of anxiety. She glanced back occasionally, wondering why her usual group of friends hadn't accompanied her today. They always want to be with me, Allison thought, trying to mask her unease by reminding herself of her popularity. There must be a reason they're not here today, she reasoned. Thoughts of loneliness and rejection flickered through Allison's mind, but she quickly pushed them away. She focused on maintaining her image of success and wealth. As she walked, Allison recalled Ms. Lindsay's words from class, the phrase, "money can't buy," echoing in her head. It felt like a foreign concept to her, disconnected from her reality. But isn't money what puts you on top? She began to question. The seed of doubt Ms. Lindsay had planted was beginning to sprout, causing Allison to question the nature of her friendships and the perfect facade she tried to maintain. Meanwhile, Sophia was leaving school with her friends, laughing and sharing stories about their day. These simple interactions with friends were a stark contrast to Allison's experience. Sophia cherished the time spent with her friends, understanding that true joy came from bonds and shared experiences, not material things. She and her friends walked together down the street leading to their homes, a modest neighborhood where their houses stood close to one another. Suddenly, they spotted Allison in the distance. Instinctively, Sophia waved and called out, "Allison, come walk home with us," her warm smile evident in her voice. However, Allison's response was cold and distant. "Thanks, but I'd rather walk alone," she replied, her voice tinged with a pride that seemed more fragile than ever. With those words, Allison turned away from the group and headed in a different direction, as if choosing to distance herself from genuine connections with her peers. Sophia and her friends watched Allison go, with Sophia feeling not just confused, but also a hint of sympathy. She sensed that there was something deeper behind Allison's attitude. something that Ms. Lindsay had started to uncover. As Allison walked a separate path, she struggled with a lump in her throat. The rejection from her friends, Sophia's offer, and her own haughty response weighed heavily on her. "Why am I acting this way?" she asked herself. Her confident exterior was slowly beginning to crumble. The walk home felt longer than ever before, each step leading her not just physically but emotionally towards self-reflection about who she was and what truly mattered. Meanwhile, Sophia and her friends continued their walk, chatting naturally. While Sophia couldn't help but worry about Allison, she was grateful for friends who valued each other as people, not possessions. The contrast between these two realities wasn't lost on Sophia. She pondered how friendship, understanding, and human warmth were the true riches that no amount of money could buy.
I was taking advantage of a rare sunny weekend to indulge in my hobby of gardening. As I tended to the plants, I found myself reflecting on the simple beauty of nature. Each flower, regardless of its size or color, seemed to enhance the vibrant tapestry of my garden. It was a peaceful moment, a welcome respite from the worries of daily school life. The thought struck me, maybe I should bring some of these flowers to the classroom. I smiled, imagining the students' faces lighting up at finding a piece of nature in their learning environment. It reminded me of my own school days, when a touch of the outdoors could brighten even the dullest lesson. Meanwhile, I knew Sophia was at the city's community library, searching for books to read. I could picture her there, in her sanctuary, a place where she could lose herself in stories beyond reality. I imagined her talking to herself, saying, "This looks interesting," as she carefully selected books. Those books promised exciting adventures and meaningful learning, I was sure. For Sophia, I realized, knowledge from books was a precious treasure, a wealth she could access freely regardless of her economic situation. It warmed my heart to think of her finding riches in those pages. At the same time, I knew Allison was sitting on a park bench with a book borrowed from the same library Sophia frequented. I could see her in my mind's eye, flipping through the pages while watching people pass by. But I suspected her mind was wandering to more personal worries. She was probably thinking about the clothes she had borrowed from a friend, clothes she had used to maintain an appearance that wasn't true to her real life. I could almost hear her anxious thoughts, "I need to return these before she notices." The realization that she would soon have to wear her own clothes again must have been weighing on her. Those clothes didn't fit the image she was trying to project. The next morning, my classroom was filled with the unique energy that marks the beginning of a new day. Students were chatting and laughing, preparing for the start of class. As I organized materials at the front of the room, I immediately noticed Allison's absence. She was a student who always sought attention, so her absence was conspicuous. I couldn't help but wonder, what could have happened to her? She wouldn't be absent without a reason. The concern I felt was familiar, a mixture of worry and curiosity that I'd experienced many times over my years of teaching.
Suddenly, the door swung open, and Allison walked in. The students were surprised not by her late arrival, but by her appearance. Gone were the brand-name clothes and flashy accessories she usually wore. Instead, Allison was dressed in much simpler, almost plain clothes. Her classmates exchanged whispers and curious glances, intrigued by this unexpected change. Noticing their reactions, Allison managed a slight smile and said she was just trying something new today, attempting to maintain her pride. Throughout the day, Allison seemed distant and pensive. It was a stark contrast to her usual confident, sometimes arrogant demeanor. Her expression was a mix of thoughtfulness and subtle anxiety. It was as if simply choosing different clothes had exposed a vulnerability she rarely showed. At lunchtime, Allison found herself isolated. Her friends, perhaps confused by her new look or unsure how to react, didn't invite her to join them. That's when Sophia approached with her lunch tray and sat next to Allison. In a warm and sincere voice, Sophia asked if she could sit there. Allison, surprised by the offer, quickly regained her indifferent attitude and said, "Sure, if you want." Sophia, seeing Allison alone at lunch, had decided to sit with her. She started a light conversation about the everyday happenings at school. "Don't you think it's weird how something new happens at school every day? Some good surprises, some not so good," Sophia said, sharing her simple and optimistic view of school life. Allison, slightly taken aback by Sophia's direct approach, felt a bit accepted and answered casually. She hinted at a busy social life, saying she sometimes found it hard to focus in class with so much going on after school. Genuinely interested, Sophia asked more about what Allison did outside of school. "Sounds like you have a lot of fun activities. What do you usually do?" Sophia asked, her natural curiosity driving the conversation. Allison, trying to maintain her image, started talking about events and parties. However, as she went into details, small inconsistencies began to appear in her story. She mentioned going to a party last weekend, then quickly backtracked, saying it was canceled and she just hung out with friends. Sophia noticed these contradictions, but didn't pursue them at first. However, her curiosity and concern got the better of her. She gently pointed out that Allison had said she had no plans last week and was going to study for a math test. Feeling cornered by Sophia's questions, Allison realized her story was falling apart. She started to feel irritated, wanting to maintain her facade, but not wanting her true self to be exposed. With a tense voice, Allison replied that she doesn't always tell everything and that things and plans change. Just then, the bell signaling the end of the break rang, abruptly ending their conversation. Allison quickly took the opportunity to leave, while Sophia was left alone with her questions and concerns. As Sophia watched Allison walk away, she pondered the complexity of Allison's character and wondered what was really happening behind her confident and arrogant exterior.
As the days went by, Allison's absence became more and more noticeable, and I found myself increasingly worried. The classroom, once filled with her attention-seeking presence, now held an empty chair and unanswered questions. Though I was used to the ups and downs of school life, this silence filled me with a special kind of anxiety. It was a deep, genuine concern that went beyond academic worries. It was about Allison as a person. One quiet night, I sat at home in front of my computer, its cold light illuminating my dark thoughts. The decision to visit Allison's home on Saturday was unusual for a school-related issue, but I was that troubled. What could have happened to cause such a dramatic change? I wondered as I navigated the school system to find Allison's address. When I found the registered address, I couldn't help but be surprised. It was in an area known for its simplicity and economic challenges, a far cry from the luxurious lifestyle Allison often talked about. Could this be a mistake? I asked myself, but something told me this address was pointing to the truth I needed to face. On Saturday, with a calm determination, I headed to the indicated area. The narrow streets and modest houses stood in sharp contrast to the image of Allison I had in my mind. As I approached the specified house, my heart raced with a mix of anxiety and hope. Maybe I can help somehow, I thought, preparing myself for the unknown. The house was particularly modest, even by the neighborhood's standards. The front yard showed signs of care, but also of a struggle with limited resources. I took a deep breath before knocking, various scenarios running through my head. When the door opened, an older woman appeared, her expression a mix of surprise and caution. I introduced myself as Allison's teacher, explaining my concern about her recent absences and asking if she was all right. The woman, Tricia, relaxed a bit at the mention of Allison's name, a gentle smile spreading across her time-worn face. She confirmed that Allison was her daughter and invited me in. This simple, kind welcome was so different from Allison's attitude at school, giving me a glimpse into her complex life. With each step into the house, I felt I was getting closer not just to a physically modest space, but to Allison's reality. It was a reality that had been hidden behind a facade, protected by deep vulnerability. This moment marked the beginning of a new phase in our teacher-student relationship. It would be challenging, but it also held the potential for growth and understanding. As I sat with Tricia in their modest home, the reality of Allison's situation began to unfold. Tricia's face was a mixture of pride and sorrow as she explained their severe financial struggles. She told me they'd been baking and selling cakes for a while, her eyes betraying her exhaustion. Allison helped, she said, but didn't enjoy it much. As I listened to her story carefully, my heart ached as I felt the weight of her suffering. Tricia went on to explain how Allison had become distanced from her friends and lacked proper clothes, making it difficult for her to fit in at school. She revealed that Allison had been borrowing clothes from friends to maintain her image, but now even those friends were drifting away, leaving Allison more isolated than ever. I realized that Allison's absence was not just a matter of vanity or materialism, but a struggle to feel a sense of belonging. Her very identity was crumbling. Filled with sympathy and a desire to help, I made a suggestion. I proposed that Allison could sell cakes at school, not only to help financially but also as a way to potentially rebuild relationships with her classmates. It was a simple idea, but one that could transform Allison's source of shame into a strength and independence. Tricia's face lit up with hope as she expressed interest in the idea, saying she'd discuss it with Allison. Our brief conversation had forged an unexpected bond of understanding and support, a testament to the power of community and empathy. As I left Allison's house, I was overwhelmed with mixed emotions. Yet, I felt certain I'd made some difference in Allison's life, a small step for a girl learning one of life's hardest lessons. Later, when Allison returned home alone from the park, her mother was eager to discuss my proposal. Allison's reaction was a mix of anger and resistance. I could almost hear her cry of disbelief and disgust at the idea of selling cakes at school. For Allison, this proposal felt like a challenge to her already wounded image, a sentence to social exile. But Tricia, driven by necessity and unconditional love, insisted firmly. I imagined her persuasive voice echoing off the kitchen walls as she told Allison it was necessary and might not be as bad as she thought. Reluctantly, and with no other option, I would later learn that Allison agreed to my idea of bringing a cake to school. Her decision was fraught with uncertainty and fear, but it also held seeds of possibility she couldn't yet see, both economic and social salvation. On Monday, Allison arrived at school carrying a box of cakes. My eyes immediately found her, filled with worry and curiosity. I could almost hear Allison's internal monologue, her disbelief at what she was doing, her frustration that all her efforts to gain popularity were being undone by this teacher. Watching from afar, I pondered what this change meant for Allison. She had always been a proudly independent girl. She's taking a brave step today, I thought to myself. I hoped the other students would see this as a chance to support her, not as something to ridicule. During class, Allison kept the cake box beside her desk, enduring her classmates' curious glances. The tension was palpable, and Allison was visibly uncomfortable, but her determination to follow through was evident. I discreetly observed, admiring her strength in facing this new vulnerability. When break time came, the moment of truth arrived. Allison slowly stood up and, with a trembling voice, began to announce that she was selling homemade cakes. Each word seemed to be squeezed out with effort. In that instant, some students started laughing, and whispers could be heard. I watched in dismay as the students' laughter and whispers cut through the air, causing Allison to shrink back. Just when I thought the situation might spiral out of control, Sophia stepped in, her unwavering energy and optimism brightening the atmosphere. My heart swelled with pride as I saw Sophia approach Allison with an encouraging smile and buy a cake. She called out enthusiastically, urging everyone to follow her lead and buy cakes. I couldn't help but smile when Sophia bought a cake for herself and Allison, suggesting they eat together. Her words to Allison, encouraging her to try her own creation, were like a balm to my worried soul. Inspired by Sophia's bold move, I watched Allison gradually relax and become more animated as she started selling cakes. The two girls drew in curious and hungry students, transforming what could have been a moment of humiliation into a demonstration of friendship and entrepreneurial spirit. Feeling a surge of support, I made my way to the front of the line to buy a cake. As I handed over the money, I made sure to tell Allison she was doing a great job. I emphasized that this was about more than just selling cakes, it was about our community supporting each other. Tension rose when some girls who used to be close to Allison approached with mocking smiles. I held my breath as I heard them tease Allison about being a cake seller, asking who could have imagined such a thing. But Sophia stood firm beside Allison, like a lighthouse in a storm. I felt a lump in my throat as I heard Sophia encourage Allison, telling her that what she was doing mattered, regardless of what others said. It struck me how Sophia was now doing for Allison what Allison had once failed to do for her. When the bell rang, signaling the end of break time, the impact of the experience lingered. I could see that while Allison wasn't fully accepting of the situation or the help yet, she couldn't help but feel grateful towards Sophia and me. As I observed it all, I smiled quietly, recognizing the small but significant step Allison had taken. It was the beginning of a journey to find herself beyond expectations and appearances. After break time, an expectant silence filled the classroom as students took their seats. The positive energy from the cake sale still hung in the air. Suddenly, that silence was shattered as everyone's phones vibrated simultaneously with a new notification. My stomach dropped as I realized it was a photo of Allison entering her modest home, a stark contrast to the image of wealth and luxury she had always projected. Laughter and whispers filled the room, and I could see some students feeling a sense of justice at Allison's mask slipping. I winced as I heard them mockingly say this was the real life of their princess, seemingly oblivious to the pain their words might cause. Even the quieter students seemed to be judging Allison, remembering her past behavior. I looked over at Sophia and saw the anger on her face as she took in the photo and the class's reaction. I saw the mix of concern and determination on Sophia's face. To her, this wasn't a laughing matter, but a violation of Allison's privacy and dignity. I could tell she was ready to defend her new friend from the cruel judgments of their classmates. Meanwhile, I was shocked at how quickly the class had turned hostile towards Allison. I felt a surge of anger rising within me, like a protective mother bear. Without hesitation, I stood up, my presence demanding attention. My voice rang out with authority, silencing the room. "That's enough!" I could feel the weight of every eye on me as I continued, my words sharp and clear. "It is unacceptable to judge and laugh at someone based on their economic situation," I declared, my heart pounding with conviction. I wanted them to understand the gravity of their actions, so I added, "This says more about you than it does about Allison." As I looked around the room, I saw a mix of shame and defiance on the students' faces. It reminded me of my own school days, when peer pressure and judgment could be so cruel. I took a deep breath, knowing I needed to turn this into a teachable moment. I encouraged each student to reflect on their actions and prejudices. The silence that followed was heavy with introspection. I hoped that my words had planted seeds of empathy and understanding in their young minds. As I sat back down, I caught Allison's eye. The gratitude and relief in her gaze told me I had done the right thing. I knew this was just the beginning of a long journey for all of us, but I was determined to guide these young minds towards compassion and acceptance.
As lunchtime arrived, Trisha gently handed Allison a new box of cakes. Allison was visibly shaken by her classmates' reactions and the spread of the photo, but found comfort in the presence of Trisha and Sophia. The three of them shared lunch together, a moment of friendship and solidarity blossoming amidst difficult circumstances. The words exchanged during the meal were more than just conversation, they were filled with support and understanding. Sophia softly reassured Allison that she wasn't alone. Trisha watched with gratitude as Sophia showed such kindness to her daughter. Although Allison was still struggling with her emotions, she began to recognize the value of genuine friendship over appearances. Encouraged by Sophia and supported by Trisha, Allison decided to continue selling cakes during lunch. Allison and Sophia set up a small cake stand, regaining their confidence. Trisha observed from a distance, her heart warmed by the support her daughter was receiving. Students were drawn in by the sweet aroma of the cakes and recommendations from friends who had already tried them. The atmosphere was filled with curiosity and appetite, rather than judgment or mockery. At that moment, one of the girls who had earlier mocked Allison approached again, her smile hinting at hidden intentions. She provoked Allison, asking if she was still trying to sell cakes. However, Allison, bolstered by Sophia's solidarity and her newfound conviction in her actions, responded with surprising calm. She stated that she was simply doing what she could to help her family, her gaze steady and her voice firm, reflecting a newly discovered maturity. She added that she was grateful for those who understood and stood by her. The girl, taken aback by Allison's dignified response, retreated, her attempt at teasing losing its power. As lunch neared its end, the cake boxes were once again empty. This symbolized not just a successful sale, but also acceptance and support from the school community.
I joined Trisha, Allison, and Sophia as we counted the money they'd collected. The total was substantial, enough to help with the family's urgent bills, but I could see it wasn't quite enough to completely solve their financial troubles. My heart swelled with emotion as I heard Allison, her voice choked with gratitude, say how much this would help and how thankful her mother would be. But I could hear the underlying worry in her voice as she acknowledged the long road ahead. I watched with pride as Sophia, her face lit up with determination, suggested they continue selling. She proposed they might make a good team if Allison wanted to keep going. The spark in Sophia's eyes reminded me of my own youthful enthusiasm, back when I first started teaching and believed I could change the world. Sophia's idea to expand their sales beyond the school showed a maturity beyond her years. I could see Allison drawing strength from their success and newfound friendship. Her agreement to continue, even suggesting they might sell in town, filled me with hope. Her desire to keep the family out of the red and her concern for her mother's worry touched me deeply. It brought back memories of my own struggles as a young teacher, trying to make ends meet. I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of pride in both girls. I told them I'd support them completely, my voice thick with emotion. I wanted them to understand how remarkable it was that they'd come together to achieve a common goal. In that moment, I felt like I was witnessing something truly special, a lesson in humanity that no textbook could ever teach.
In the days that followed, Allison and Sophia expanded their sales activities with Trisha's approval and Mrs. Lindsay's support. They set up a portable table with a colorful tablecloth and delicious cakes, venturing beyond the school gates to sell on nearby streets. Their efforts and the quality of their cakes attracted not only students but also local residents. Allison and Sophia's initiative became more than just a temporary economic solution. It transformed into a symbol of resilience, friendship, and mutual support. Sales progressed smoothly, with each cake sold representing a small step towards stability for Allison's family and unexpectedly strengthening bonds within the school community. Allison's transformation didn't go unnoticed in the school hallways. The once proud and distant girl was becoming a leader who valued humility and gratitude. Her friendship with Sophia, which had blossomed in the most unexpected circumstances, visibly evolved through the power of support and understanding. The two girls fostered an environment of inclusivity and empathy, significantly impacting their classmates. After months of effort and unexpected support from the school community, Trisha finally brought home good news. One evening, with a trembling voice full of relief and joy, Trisha announced that they had finally achieved stability. The news was met with hugs and tears of happiness. It symbolized not just overcoming financial difficulties, but also strengthening family bonds and collective resilience. The success of the cake project, which started as a means to meet urgent payments, had become a source of pride and inspiration. Allison and Sophia reflected on the impact they had created and began to imagine their future. One day, while sharing snacks during a break, Allison suggested they take a moment to pause. She proposed continuing their venture after graduation. Sophia, always ready to embrace new possibilities, smiled at the idea. Jokingly, she said it wouldn't be bad for Allison and Sophia to become bakery owners, her imagination already picturing a small, cozy bakery filled with laughter and delicious cakes. They laughed together, sharing dreams of a future supported by their friends. Their laughter caught the attention of other classmates who joined the conversation, expressing support and admiration. One student declared they'd definitely become regulars, with others excitedly agreeing. As the bell rang signaling the end of break time, Allison and Sophia exchanged glances. It was a silent signal that their joke had become a real possibility, requiring the same determination and effort they'd shown so far. Allison's journey from hiding her reality behind arrogance to becoming a force for positive change at school demonstrated a powerful lesson about finding true strength by facing vulnerability and working together to overcome it. For Trisha, seeing her daughter not only stabilize the family's financial situation, but also grow and find purpose through this journey was a gift beyond expectations. Returning to class after the break, Allison and Sophia could barely contain their excitement. With only 5 days left until graduation, there was an air of anticipation for the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Sophia, with a mix of nostalgia and expectation, remarked how unbelievable it was that high school was ending, feeling like they had just started yesterday. Allison agreed, reflecting on her own transformative journey. She acknowledged how much had changed, considering all they had experienced together, and smiled gratefully at Sophia. She added that the bakery would be their new beginning. The following days flew by in a mix of preparation and anticipation. When graduation day finally arrived, the atmosphere was charged with electric excitement. Trisha was proud and moved to participate as one of the special guests.
I was there at the graduation ceremony, feeling more like a mentor than just a teacher to Allison and Sophia. In the midst of the celebratory mood, with hugs, tears, and laughter all around, the girls found a quiet moment to share their vision of the bakery with Trisha and me. I'll never forget the excitement in Allison's voice as she told us about their plans to open their own bakery. She said it wouldn't just be a business, but a bright place where people could gather, just like school. Well, I tell you, my heart just about burst with pride. I smiled at them, feeling my eyes well up with tears of joy. I told them I'd always known they'd do something wonderful, and that their bakery idea was truly lovely. It was like watching my own children spread their wings, you know? Trisha was just as moved, bless her heart. She congratulated Allison on overcoming so many difficulties and thanked Sophia for her invaluable friendship and support. She said a bakery that spread such kindness was more than she could have hoped for. With our full support, that little joke during school breaks had blossomed into a real plan. Graduation night was a celebration filled with joy and anticipation for the future, but for Allison and Sophia, it was the beginning of their next big adventure. While for many, the graduation party marked the end of their high school stories, for these two, it was just the start of a new journey. A journey they'd take with a community, family, and friends full of love and support. The future of their bakery was brimming with possibilities, and those girls were ready to make it all happen. After the graduation ceremony, diplomas in hand, Allison and Sophia faced their future, aiming to open their shared dream bakery. They started small, but you could see they were applying all the lessons they'd learned from selling cakes at school. I heard they rented a little shop on a quiet corner of town, determined to make it not just a business, but a warm gathering place for the community. In those first few days, I can just imagine the smell of freshly baked cakes and bread filling the air, drawing in curious customers. With each cake sold, I bet those girls grew more confident and connected with the people around them. I picture them taking turns at the counter, sometimes at the oven, learning and adjusting a little each day. They always kept in mind the importance of maintaining a warm, human touch in their place. As time passed, their bakery flourished, becoming a local landmark from its modest beginnings. It became known for its delicious homemade pastries and as a place where friends and family gathered. I've been told the interior is decorated with local photos and art, telling the story of their journey and the people who supported them. On particularly sunny afternoons, Trisha and I make it a point to visit the bakery. It's become a cherished tradition for us. As we enter, we're greeted by the familiar sound of the doorbell and warm smiles. The bakery is always bustling with typical afternoon activity, but Allison and Sophia always make time for us. We sit at our favorite table, sharing laughs and memories over steaming coffee and the bakery's best pastries. I can't help but look around in admiration and tell them, "You've really made this place into something special." I remind them that it's not just about the delicious cakes, but how people feel at home here. It's a doozy of a success story, I tell you, and I couldn't be prouder of those girls. I watched as Trisha nodded, her eyes brimming with pride. She squeezed Allison's hand, saying she'd always known her daughter would accomplish something this big. Then, turning to Sophia, she said something that touched my heart, that Sophia had become part of their family. It was clear to me that these girls had built more than just a business. They'd created a piece of the town's heart. The look Allison and Sophia exchanged was one of gratitude and contentment. It reminded me of the looks I'd seen between lifelong friends. Allison's response nearly brought tears to my eyes. She said they couldn't have come this far without support from people like us. This bakery, she explained, was a testament to everything they'd overcome and all the joy they'd shared. As the afternoon faded into evening, we lost track of time, sharing memories and discussing future plans. It felt like one of those perfect moments you wish could last forever. When it was time to say goodbye, we hugged tightly, promising to meet again soon. As Trisha and I left, I glanced back to see Allison and Sophia standing in the bakery doorway. The contentment on their faces was palpable, and it filled my heart with joy. That bakery, once just a dream, now stood as a shining symbol of friendship, perseverance, and community unity. Watching the bakery lights twinkle under the darkening sky, I couldn't help but feel that Allison and Sophia were ready for whatever the future might bring. They had each other, and they were surrounded by people who loved and believed in them. It was a far cry from the troubled beginnings we'd had, and I felt blessed to have been part of their journey. As I walked away, I thought to myself, now, that's what I call a happy ending. Or, should I say, a new beginning.
If you enjoyed this heartwarming tale, we'd be mighty grateful if you could give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Your support is what keeps us going, bringing you these touching stories day after day. Keep your eyes peeled for the next amazing story that'll pop up on your screen. We can't thank you enough for your support. It means the world to us. Until next time, take care and God bless.